Chapter 1181. In a sense, the seed of life was a part of the ruler of the plane, and ever since his progression to the soul sage level, his powers had been increasing at a rapid rate. Furthermore, he had obtained that piece of goldwater consonants from Zhenhua, and it really did seem that his luck had improved. He was even able to make smooth breakthroughs in his cultivation of the body sex congenital secret method. Were these all benefits of being the chosen one? You must have thought of some things just now as well, right? This is why the Tang sect made the decision to make you the sect master. Long Ye explained. Your Majesty, I already agreed. After a brief pause, Tang Wuling decided to come clean. Long Ye replied, good. I'm telling you all of this not because I'm trying to expose the Tang sect as an organization that's trying to use you. Instead, what I'm telling you is that I agree with their decision. From now on, not only are you the leader of the Tang sect, you will also be the new leader of Shrek Academy, and we will support you with all of our power. Huh? Tang Wuling stared at Long Ye and was struggling to wrap his head around what he had just been told. Long Ye smiled and said, in these extraordinary times, we need an extraordinary leader. I'm already an old woman. Are you expecting someone in their 200s to shoulder this burden? Perhaps I can bring some victories, but I can never be the future hope of Shrek Academy. That's a duty that can only fall to you. Tang Wuling was feeling a little disoriented. He had been struck by too many shocking revelations during this trip to the Tang sect headquarters. We will all assist you in your plight, and I'm telling you this to make you understand that the path you take from here must be concurrent with the needs of the plane. Only then will you have the smoothest journey. Otherwise, even if you were chosen by the plane, it's a possibility that you could be abandoned. I understand, Tang Wuling replied. All right, go back and bring Wu Zhangkong and the others over here now. Even after Tang Wuling left the Tang sect, he was still feeling a little woozy. However, this didn't impede his ability to fool all of the senses outside, and he quickly disappeared into the crowd outside as a normal person. In the span of only a few hours, he had become the Tang sect master and the new leader of Shrek Academy. Neither of these super organizations were anywhere near their peaks, but he was only 21 and no one in history had ever been entrusted with both of these roles at once. Even Thousand Hands Douluo Tang San, Spirit Ice Douluo Hua, who went on to become gods, never achieved this. This was simply incredible to him, but it was the truth. Nonetheless, after returning to the Sea God's Lake, Tang Wuling sought out Wu Zhangkong before revealing to him the news that Long Yeyu and some of the inner court disciples were still alive. Wu Zhangkong was naturally ecstatic to hear this, but after careful consideration, he decided against going to the Tang sect with the 215 students. Instead, he returned to the Tang sect with Tang Wuling on his own. After arriving before Long Yeyu, Wu Zhangkong extended a respectful bow before cutting straight to the chase. Elder Long, I don't think this is the right time for everyone to be reunited. Long Yeyu asked, what's your reasoning? Wu Zhangkong explained, your prior concerns were valid. These 215 students have benefited greatly from the academy and are willing to give everything they have to the academy, but they're still too young and don't have enough experience. I think they need more improvement and training before they can become true pillars of the academy in the future. Hence, I think that the training proposed by Wuling is absolutely imperative. Only after passing the demonic island trials can they be considered to have matured and earned themselves the right to know the secret here. Long Ye thought about this for a moment before replying. That makes sense. We'll do as you say. Then, splitting up into two different areas will also be a safer arrangement. If something were to happen to one side, there would at least still be hope. While Wu Zhangkong was speaking with Long Yeyu, Tang Wuling was also chatting with Lan Muzi. From Lan Muzi, he finally learned how the inner court disciples had survived. The elders of the Sea God's Pavilion had given their lives to ward off the power of the Godslayer missile and gave them a chance to survive. Just like the teachers of the outer courts, the elders of the Sea God's Pavilion had given everything they had to buy the disciples an opportunity to live on. There was no sanctuary in the inner court, but there was a strange teleportation array that teleported everyone away during the crisis. Light Dark Douluo Long Yeyu was situated on the outskirts of the explosion, and she had used her powers to forcibly withstand the shockwaves of the explosion before escaping after sustaining some injuries. Just as everyone was sharing past experiences, Long Yeyu and Wu Zhangkong made their way over to them. Her lips trembled slightly as she transmitted her voice toward Holy Spirit Douluo Yali, who was currently instructing a pair of healing system soul masters. Yali made her way over to Long Yeyu, and all of the inner court disciples hurriedly rose to their feet before gathering around Long Yeyu in a respectful manner. Long Yeyu said in a serious voice, I hereby announce the revival of Shrek Academy. Wu Zhangkong will be principal of the outer court, I will be the principal of the inner court, and Yali will be the vice pavilion master of the Sea God's Pavilion. Tang Wuling, Wu Zhangkong, Lan Muzi, Tang Yunmeng, and the other 6 members of Shrek's 7 monsters will be elders of the Sea God's Pavilion. Expressions of excitement appeared on everyone's faces upon hearing this, and they clenched their fists tightly as they replied in unison, yes, Pavilion Master. However, Long Ye waved a hand and said, no, I'm still a vice pavilion master. From this day forth, the role of pavilion master will be inherited by the leader of Shrek's 7 monsters, Tang Wuling. Aside from Tang Wuling, who was already aware of this arrangement, everyone was given a massive shock upon hearing this, and even Wu Zhangkong had an astonished look on his face. Tang Wuling was the Sea God's Pavilion master, but he was only 21. He was indeed the future hope of the academy, but Wu Zhangkong and Lan Muzi were both more suitable candidates than him both in terms of status and ability. All of the inner court disciples turned to stare at Tang Wuling in unison with shock and befuddlement in their eyes. Even if he was the leader of Shrek's 7 monsters, he was still far too young. However, no one dared to challenge Long Yeyu's authority. Yali slowly made her way over to Tang Wuling before light flashed in her hands, and a spear that was shimmering with scorching white light appeared in her grasp. This was none other than Atlas Douluo Yanming's Atlas Spear Martial Soul, which had attained a substantial form in his dying moments. Wuling, Yanming left this behind, and I'm giving this to you now, seeing as you also use a spear. I hope you can inherit his will and return Shrek Academy to its former glory. Tang Wuling's heart was filled with a myriad of emotions at the sight of the spear being presented to him by Yali. The Atlas Spear was radiating scorching white light, and it was almost transparent. In contrast with the dual-tip nature of the Golden Dragon Spear, the Atlas Spear only had one sharp spearhead, but it was very long and took up almost a third of the length of the entire spear. The spearhead was glowing brighter than the rest of the spear, and the word Atlas was inscribed in antiquated text on the shaft of the spear connected to the spearhead. Through his spiritual power, the first thing that Tang Wuling could sense from the spear was boundless spear intent. No, to put it more accurately, this was the essence of the spear. The last time that Tang Wuling had seen the divine Atlas Spear, he had only been a novice spearman, so he hadn't had a very clear sense of this. However, even looking at the shaft of the spear now, he was struck by a completely different feeling. Your Majesty. Tang Wuling's voice was trembling slightly. Chapter 1182. A warm and gentle smile appeared on Yali's face. Even though her eyes were completely dim and soulless, her smile was just as gentle as ever. Call me mistress from now on. You're inheriting his divine Atlas Spear, so I'm taking you as his disciple instead. His inheritance has been contained in the spear in its entirety. Yali offered the divine Atlas Spear to Tang Wuling, and he accepted the spear as countless emotions surged through his heart. He fell to his knees before raising the divine Atlas Spear high above his head, then kowtowed to Yali 3 times in succession. Wuling pays his respects to Mistress Yali. Yali looked on with a gratified look in her eyes. I'll make sure to stick around until that day comes. I'm sure you'll glow just as radiantly as you did in the instant you revived Shrek Academy. The most painful moment of Yanming's life was the moment that the academy was destroyed, but I never thought of him as a failure of a Sea God's Pavilion master, and I will always take pride in him. Don't squander his spear. I hope it'll become a pillar that supports Shrek Academy one day. Yes, mistress. I'll do everything in my power to live up to teachers' expectations. Yanming was once Naya's teacher, and from this moment forth, he was also Tang Wuling's teacher. Tang Wuling rose to his feet again with the divine Atlas Spear in his hand, and Lan Muzi smiled as he said, Lan Muzi pays his respects to the Pavilion Master. Only then did the other inner court disciples return to their senses, and all of them bowed toward Tang Wuling at the same time. We pay our respects to the Pavilion Master. That's right. From the moment Tang Wuling accepted the spear, he had already become the current Sea God's Pavilion Master, the true leader of Shrek Academy. A faint smile appeared on Long Yeyu's face as she nodded at Tang Wuling in an approving manner. I also have something to give to you. She extended a hand toward him as she spoke, revealing a transparent rhomboid crystal. The crystal was of a shimmering blue color, and there seemed to be water rippling within it. Tang Wuling's attention was instantly drawn to the blue crystal. There seemed to be an enormous suction force within the crystal, and as soon as his gaze settled on it, he immediately sensed sensed that his enormous spiritual power was drawn into the crystal. His surroundings instantly fell silent, and Tang Wuling was stunned to discover that he seemed to have entered a boundless blue world. There were translucent blue fish swimming past him, and this entire blue world seemed to be filled with boundless life force energy. This was an extremely wonderful feeling, and he felt as if he were bathing in rich life force energy. After what seemed like an eternity, but also what could have been the mere blink of an eye, Tang Wuling returned to his senses, and he was still staring blankly at the dazzling crystal in Wang Yeyu's hand. He raised his head to look at everyone else, and it seemed that none of them had been struck by the same feeling as him. All of them were merely stunned by the radiant beauty of this rhomboid crystal. This is the vast sea cosmic crystal, and it's an extremely rare treasure that has always been kept in the sea god's pavilion. It's also the most precious treasure in the entire academy, and its origins date all the way back to over 20,000 years ago. The first master of the Tang sect, Thousand-Hand Douluo Tang San, who was also the leader of the first generation of Shrek's 7 monsters, was the one who had obtained this treasure. We don't know how he managed to obtain it, but what we do know is that this crystal played an extremely important role in his ascension to become a god. In our academy, only those who have reached the limit Douluo level and have accrued enough experience have the right to sense the crystal and search for a path to the divine realm through doing so. This vast sea cosmic crystal has always been kept in the sea god's pavilion, and on the day that the disaster struck, the pavilion master gave it to me and told me to protect it. As the oldest living member of Shrek Academy, I should have been the one to protect the academy until the very end, but he told me that he had a responsibility to see things through as the pavilion master, so I lived on. Today, I'm giving this vast sea cosmic crystal to you in the hope that you can complete his final wish. I hope that you can restore Shrek Academy to its former glory and protect it as all of the past sea gods pavilion masters have done. Yes. Tang Wuling carefully accepted the vast sea cosmic crystal with a solemn look in his eyes. The crystal was cool to the touch, but had a soft texture like that of jelly rather than an actual crystal, which was a rather peculiar feeling. Wang Ye continued in a serious voice. Next, we'll act according to the plan. Zhang Kong, you take the first batch of students to the demonic island in person. I've already finalized which students will be going. Wuling, don't go anywhere for the next 3 months. Just cultivate herein, the Tang sect, and after the 3 months pass, you'll be going to the Douluo Empire and Dou Spirit Empire. Yes. Tang Wuling nodded in response. However, Wang Ye's expression abruptly darkened slightly. Wuling, you are now the Sea God's Pavilion Master, and the true leader of Shrek Academy, as well as the Tang Sect Master. You have to act according to your status. No matter where you are, you represent the Tang Sect and Shrek Academy, so don't ever display that attitude again, even to myself or Zhangxin and Cao Daja. You have to carry yourself with the aura of a leader, not the humble air of a student or disciple. Tang Wuling folded slightly upon hearing this before nodding with a wry smile on his face. In all honesty, these roles had fallen upon him far too abruptly, and he still hadn't grown accustomed to them yet. Wang Ye withdrew her gaze, and continued. Alright, everything will proceed as planned. The Sea God's Pavilion will still be responsible for making all of the specific decisions. Aside from Tang Wuling, everyone else from Shrek Academy extended respectful bows toward Wang Ye. Tang Wuling was taken to an independent silent chamber. Due to his meteoric rise in status, the room that was given to him was naturally also of the highest caliber. This was a room with an area of close to 200 square meters with his very own study, bathroom, cultivation chamber, as well as a designated forging room. There was everything that he needed here. After returning to his room, Tang Wuling went straight into his cultivation chamber, and even as he sat down with his legs crossed, he still couldn't help but feel as if this were all a dream. Had he really become the leader of the Tang Sect and Shrek Academy? It was no exaggeration to say that he was the first person in history to achieve this status. Even the legendary Thousand-Hand Douluo Tang San and Spirit Ice Douluo Hua Yua had never reached such heights before. Furthermore, he was only 21 years of age, so it was naturally inevitable that he was feeling rather proud of himself. However, at the same time, he knew that the burden on his shoulders had grown even heavier. He had thought that light dark Douluo Long Yeyu and Wu Zhangkong would be able to alleviate some of this burden, but it seemed that the brunt of the responsibility still fell upon him. This was undoubtedly testament to the fact that everyone held him in extremely high regard, but it also meant that he would be carrying a greater burden. However, compared to in the past, his mood was drastically different. At the very least, he was no longer alone. Shrek Academy hadn't been completely destroyed, after all, and there were still so many exceptional inner court and outer court disciples who had survived. The foundation of Shrek Academy was still there, and once they all grew up in the near future, Shrek Academy's foundation would be bolstered even further. Perhaps this would be a slightly lengthy process, but the heritage of Shrek Academy hadn't been severed, and the Sea God's Pavilion still existed. Tang Wuling was struck by an indescribable sense of excitement as he followed this train of thought, and he wanted to roar to the heavens in elation. Back when he had first traveled to the Blood God Legion, he had been in a very depressed state of mind. His academy had been destroyed, which meant that he no longer had a home. How could he not be depressed and in pain? Now, he had finally seen hope, and at the very least, everything was progressing toward a positive direction. With the foundation of the Tang Sect and Shrek Academy, everything was possible. He was even beginning to think beyond his original final objective. Rebuilding Shrek Academy definitely couldn't be his final goal. After all, the continent was still being controlled by the federal government, so not only did he need to rebuild Shrek Academy, he had to garner the support of the entire Federation. There were many enemies that he and his friends were going to face in the future, including the Holy Spirit cult, and even the powers supporting the Eagle faction, the most difficult of which to deal with was very likely going to be the Spirit Pagoda. In fact, the threat that they posed could be even more lethal than that of the Holy Spirit cult. Chapter 1183. Aside from that, there were also countless powers in the shadows that he had to deal with, and that wasn't even taking into account the stern opposition he would most likely face from the federal military. That was why Zhangxin was so eager to encourage the Douluo Empire and Dou Spirit Empire to join forces in order to at least delay, if not prevent this war from taking place altogether. With that in mind, a harrowing scene appeared in Tang Wuling's mind. It was the scene during which he had faced the Holy Lord in the Abyssal Passageway. He could still clearly recall the boundless killing intent that the Holy Lord had harbored toward him. The Abyssal Plane had since been forced back, and the seal had also been fortified, but was this really enough to ward off the next attack from the Abyssal Plane? Tang Wuling didn't know, and no one knew the answer to that question. If the Abyssal Plane decided to attack without paying any heed to consequences, then the next Abyssal Tide could happen at any moment. Hence, the Abyssal Plane was also one of the enemies that he would have to face. As the one who had been chosen by the plane, he was also going to be under the most pressure, and it could even be said that the Abyssal Plane could be his most powerful enemy in the future. As such, it was imperative for him to become more powerful. During the past few weeks, Tang Wuling could clearly sense just how quickly he had been progressing. During the 3-month period where he had been in seclusion, he had collated all of the rewards he had reaped during his time at the Blood God Legion in the first month. In particular, he had integrated all of the experiences he had attained through his spiritual power during the battle against the Holy Lord into his abilities. After that, he had cultivated with all his might, and defeating Wu Zhangkong in that sparring match definitely hadn't been a case of pure dumb luck. This was a manifestation of everything that he had accumulated and a display of his true power. With the enhancements he received from his Golden Dragon Spear and Golden Dragon King bloodline, his overall combat prowess was already comparable to the average titled Douluo, even though he was only a soul sage. Of course, this only applied when neither side was using their battle armor. In reality, Tang Wuling was completely unable to use his battle armor at the moment. The structure for his suit of 3-word battle armor had already been completed, but the core circuits hadn't been carved yet. He was currently at rank 73 in soul power, which meant that he had progressed 2 ranks during just 3 months. As a soul sage, this rate of progression was downright inconceivable. Furthermore, Tang Wuling could clearly sense that the rate of his progression was still increasing, and under the current circumstances, he was confident that he would be able to progress to the soul Douluo level after another year at most. As for the title Douluo level, that was one that he would reach in no more than 3 years. By then, he would only be 24 years old, and even in the history of Shrek Academy, such a young title Douluo would be extremely rare. Tang Wuling had already made up his mind. Once he reached the soul Douluo level, he was going to break his 12th Golden Dragon King seal at the same time, which would give him his 6th Golden Soul Ring. His 5th Golden Soul Ring's Golden Dragon Vibrational Explosion had already drastically enhanced all his existing abilities, so the 6th Golden Elden Ring would definitely only bestow upon him an even more fearsome soul skill. With his physical constitution and tolerance, he would perhaps be able to consider constructing a suit of 4-word battle armor for himself as soon as he became a titled Douluo. Once he became a 4-word battle armor master, Tang Wuling was confident that he would be able to face any powerful being in this world. He had a very clear plan for his future cultivation, and ever since he became a soul sage, he could clearly sense that he had risen to a completely different level. From that moment forth, he had truly become a powerful being. A faint smile appeared on his face, and just as he was about to begin cultivating, the soul communicator on his wrist suddenly began to ring. Tang Wuling glanced down at his wrist, and an excited look immediately appeared in his eyes. He accepted the incoming call, and a familiar voice rang out from the other end of the line. Where are you? All right, wait for me. After an extremely brief conversation, Tang Wuling quickly rose to his feet before rushing out of his room. The Tang sect headquarters encompassed virtually the entire underground world of Dou City, so it had a myriad of exits. Several minutes later, Tang Wuling appeared on the streets of Dou City, and due to his excessive excitement, he hadn't even had a chance to disguise himself. He had only put on a mask and a hat to conceal his own appearance as much as possible, and he narrowed his eyes slightly as he released his spiritual power almost in a reckless manner. At his level of spiritual power, no one would be able to detect what he was up to unless they were also at the spirit domain realm. On top of that, he was so excited that he didn't want to think about these details. After all, it wasn't a significant issue. A middle-aged man in a set of ordinary clothes suddenly faltered just as he was about to walk into the largest auction house in Dou City. This middle-aged man was completely mundane in appearance, but he also wore a mask like Tang Wuling did. There was another person accompanying him, and if Tang Wuling could see her right now, he would definitely be excited beyond belief. She also wore a mask to conceal her exquisitely gorgeous features, but she had a head of luscious silver hair and a pair of captivating purple eyes, both of which were extremely distinctive features. That's some impressive spiritual power, the middle-aged man murmured. Do you sense that, Naya? Yuna shook her head in silence as she walked along beside the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's eyes narrowed slightly. You're close to the spirit domain realm now, right? Don't try to force it. You'll know once you break through that bottleneck. German, from the sounds of it, are you saying that there's a powerful being nearby who's releasing their spiritual power? Yuna's voice was still as heavenly as ever, but it was completely emotionless. Indeed. They seem to be searching for something and harbor no animosity. Let's go in. Dou City really is rife with powerful beings. If I didn't have to purchase that auction item for you, I would definitely go and see which mighty figure is releasing their spiritual power so carelessly here. After that, he walked directly into the auction house. However, Yuna paused slightly before looking back with complex emotions in her eyes. She then clenched her fists tightly, and the impulsive urge in her eyes vanished in a flash. Found him. Tang Wuling's spiritual power scoured over the surrounding area before he quickly found that familiar figure. In the instant that he caught sight of him, the smile on Tang Wuling's face widened even further, and he strode directly toward his target. That man seemed to have also sensed Tang Wuling's presence, and he abruptly turned around to face him. In contrast with Tang Wuling, this man wasn't wearing a mask. He had a set of ordinary facial features, but his back was remarkably straight, and his golden hair practically shimmered under the sun. A sly smile appeared on his face as he made his way toward Tang Wuling, and just as they were about to reach one another, Tang Wuling abruptly lashed out first, thrusting a palm toward the other man's chest. The golden-haired man retaliated in kind, and their two palms clashed with a crisp clap before gripping tightly onto one another. Tang Wuling pulled back his right hand, and it was undoubtedly the case that he was a lot stronger than the golden-haired man, so his shoulder ran straight into his chest. However, in the next instant, both of them burst out laughing in unison. Welcome back. Tang Wuling firmly held the man's hand in his own. Aren't you being a little too passionate? It's a good thing Xiaoan isn't around. The golden-haired man chuckled. Chapter 1184. Tang Wuling asked, now that you mention it, where is Xiaoan? The golden-haired man was none other than Yue Hangyu in disguise, and he smiled as he replied, she told me that she has her own path to pursue, and she didn't tell me where she went before she left, but I can roughly guess her destination. Don't worry, I already contacted her, so she should be here in 1 or 2 days. You may have become the champion of the Star Battle.net Inter-Federation competition, but we've improved quite a bit as well. You better not let down your guard lest you get beaten by us. Tang Wuling rolled his eyes in response. When Xiaoan gets here, you two can fight me 2-on-1. Yue Hangyu's eyes abruptly lit up. I'm taking you up on that offer. Don't start crying when you lose. Oh, Tang Wuling was rather taken aback to hear this. Sounds like you're really confident. You've progressed to the Soul Sage level, right? A proud look appeared on Yue Hangyu's face. Of course. It was a piece of cake. Tang Wuling said, let's go somewhere else. This isn't the right place to talk. He then released Yue Hangyu's hand, and the two of them walked along the street side by side. Yue Hangyu looked around at the city, and sighed. It feels good to be back. It's just a pity that this isn't Shrek City. A slightly dejected look then appeared on his face. Not only did Tang Wuling have an extremely strong bond with Shrek Academy, Yue Hangyu had been at Shrek Academy 3 years more than Tang Wuling, so he was actually even closer with the academy. Otherwise, he wouldn't have worked so hard during this past period of time. By the way, I'm already a colonel, and don't go saying I made it to that rank through my familial connections. Even my strict grandpa didn't say anything. What about you? Yue Hangyu nudged Tang Wuling with his shoulder. Tang Wuling chuckled. You seem pretty excited. Looks like you must have had a hard time in the Southern Legion. Yue Hangyu shrugged in response. I did nothing aside from cultivate every day, and after Xiaoan left, I didn't even have anyone to talk to. Then again, it's not like I had the spare time to talk to anyone anyway. By the way, where's everyone else? I'm not the first one to have arrived, am I? Tang Wuling replied. So what if you're first? It just shows how eager and conscientious you are. Everyone else will probably arrive in the next few days as well. Yue Hangyu suddenly fell silent, and only after a few seconds did he heave a long sigh. It's really good to be able to see everyone again. Tang Wuling didn't respond and merely bumped him with his shoulder. Indeed, it really was fantastic to be reunited with his friends. He already had the Blood Dragon squad by his side, as well as the support of Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, but no one provided better support to him than the friends that he had been with for so many years. They were the current Shrek 7 monsters, and they were a unified entity. Oh, by the way, Zhengyu, I've got some good news for you. You're now an elder of the Sea Gods Pavilion and can participate in Sea Gods Pavilion meetings. Yue Hangyu faltered slightly upon hearing this, but as opposed to being elated by this news, a wry smile appeared on his face instead. Elder of the Sea Gods Pavilion? Are we just giving ourselves these titles now? It's not like there's anyone else left aside from us. In order to give everyone a surprise, Tang Wuling had refrained from revealing the fact that there were still so many members of Shrek Academy who were alive at the Tang sect. Yue Hangyu seemed to have realized that he was being a spoilsport, and he forced a smile onto his face as he said, in that case, as the leader of Shrek 7 monsters, shouldn't you be the Sea Gods Pavilion master? Tang Wuling nodded in response. I sure am. Yue Hangyu chuckled. All right, then let's support this new Sea Gods Pavilion together. We'll definitely be able to revive Shrek Academy, right? Of course, Tang Wuling replied in a voice that was filled with conviction. Yue Hangyu then lowered his voice and said, hey boss, seeing as no one else is back yet, shouldn't you be giving me the title of Vice Pavilion Master? You can give the other spot to Yuan or Zinglin. The Sea Gods Pavilion usually has 2 Vice Pavilion Masters, right? A hint of a smile appeared on Tang Wuling's face. We'll discuss this with everyone during the Sea Gods Pavilion meeting. As you know, the Sea Gods Pavilion has always been renowned for its fairness and openness. Everything has to be discussed with everyone. Yue Hangyu shrugged in response. Can't you make an exception? There are only 7 of us anyway. Oh, I almost forgot. There's still Her Majesty, the Holy Spirit Douluo. Is she not willing to be the Pavilion Master? Has she still not recovered from her trauma? Tang Wuling sighed. It's not that easy to recover from something like this. Her heart is already dead, and if she went determined to see the revival of Shrek Academy, I'm afraid she would have most likely. Yue Hangyu's expression also fell upon hearing this. Truth be told, rebuilding Shrek Academy is going to be a very difficult task. Before I came here, my grandfather told me many things regarding the current situation, and he's very pessimistic about our chances. Tang Wuling's heart stirred slightly upon hearing this. The Southern Legion belongs to the Eagle faction, right? Yue Hangyu nodded in response. The Southern Legion is rather special in that it's situated in quite a wealthy region and is also quite far away from all other legions. Generally speaking, the Legion doesn't participate in political battles, but our Yue family descends from the former master of the Spirit Hall, and our family ethos states that the Douluo Empire is our enemy. Hence, if the Federation declares war on the Douluo Empire, the Southern Legion will definitely support the cause. Tang Wuling nodded before asking, what about rebuilding Shrek Academy? me. Will the Southern Legion support us? A wry smile appeared on Yue Hengyu's face. It'll be very difficult to garner their support. I don't want to dent your confidence, but I have to tell you the truth. My grandfather explicitly told me prior to my departure that he and the Southern Legion won't support the rebuilding of our Shrek Academy as doing so could greatly impact our entire family. Tang Wuling had already guessed that this would be the case, but he still couldn't help but be a little disappointed to hear this notion being confirmed. However, at the very least, my grandfather said that the Southern Legion won't oppose the revival of Shrek Academy, and he even proposed two possible scenarios where they'll be willing to lend us their support. The first scenario is if we can display sufficient power to combat all of those who are opposed to the revival of Shrek Academy, and the second scenario is if I become a four-word battle armor master. If I ever reach that point, I will inherit the role of Legion commander from my grandfather, and the Legion will lend us their assistance for my sake. However, neither of those sets of criteria will be easy to fulfill. Tang Wuling nodded upon hearing this. Indeed, both sets of conditions were quite difficult to satisfy. Barring extremely special circumstances, most soul masters could only become four-word battle armor masters after reaching at least the hyper Douluo level, and a lot of the time, just reaching the hyper Douluo level was still insufficient as one required heavenly refined metals to become a four-word battle armor master. There weren't that many hyper Douluos, but there definitely wasn't a small number of them either. However, every heavenly refinement that divine blacksmiths and who had completed was extremely taxing to him, and after completing one suit of four-word battle armor, he would have to rest for a long time before he could replicate the feat. Hence, he very rarely accepted heavenly refinement jobs now. We'll find a way. You can count on me. Tang Wuling patted him on the shoulder. Yue Hengy turned to him with a slightly surprised expression. Not only had Tang Wuling not been disheartened by this bad news, his eyes were still glowing with confidence. Looks like becoming the champion of the Star Battle.net Interfederation competition has instilled you with a lot of confidence. Boss, I have to commend you for that. Tang Wuling smiled and replied, confidence stems from ability. Come with me. He dragged Yue Hengy into a nearby alley as he spoke. After releasing his spiritual power to verify that there were no prying eyes around, he led Yue Hengy into a small courtyard, and when they arrived in the underground world of the Tang sect, Yue Hengy was also given a massive shock. This is... The awe-inspiring underground world had shocked him beyond words. He looked at all of the busy workers and mechas being churned out on the production lines, and he couldn't help but gulp in astonishment. Everything here belongs to the Tang sect. Yue Hengy asked in a stunned manner. Tang Wuling nodded in response. And it also belongs to us. Tang Wuling led him to the door of a room, and before he had even pressed the doorbell, the door opened on its own. Lan Muzi strode out from within before smiling at the sight of Tang Wuling and extending a respectful bow. Pavilion Master, no need for formalities. Senior Disciple Brother Lan, Tang Wuling replied with a smile and a nod. After Long Ye's reminder, he was trying to act more befitting of his current status. Lan Muzi then quickly caught sight of Yue Hengy, who was staring at him with his mouth gaped wide open. Long time no see. Junior Disciple Brother Hengy. Yue Hengy was so shocked that he had developed a stutter. Say, Senior Disciple Brother Lan, you're not dead. You. Chapter 1185. Tang Wuling chuckled, quit stuttering. Are you surprised? Yue Hengy had already rushed forward and was closely inspecting Lan Muzi in fear that he had simply misidentified this man to be Lan Muzi. Are you really not dead? Are you sure you're not a ghost? Yue Hengy asked in a flabbergasted manner. Lan Muzi didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. Are you that eager for me to become a ghost? Don't worry, I'm alive and well. Tang Wuling couldn't bear to watch any longer, and he gave Lan Muzi an apologetic glance before dragging Yue Hengy into the room. Inside the room, Long Yeyu and Wu Zhangkong were currently discussing the first batch of students to be sent to the demonic island. Wu Zhangkong rose to his feet first, followed by Long Yeyu, and both of them bowed slightly toward Tang Wuling in unison. Pavilion Master. Yue Hengy hadn't thought much of it when Lan Muzi had referred to Tang Wuling as Pavilion Master, but he was completely stunned that Wu Zhangkong and Long Yeyu were doing the same thing. Elder Long. Teacher Wu. Yue Hengy became even more emotional than Tang Wuling had been when he had first been reunited with Wu Zhangkong. He had already had his suspicions when he saw Lan Muzi, but as soon as he caught sight of Wu Zhangkong, his emotions immediately overflowed. He hadn't grown up under Wu Zhangkong's watchful eye like Tang Wuling, Xu Shaoan, and Gu Yue had, but he had still been Wu Zhangkong's student for many years. Now that Wu Zhangkong had essentially risen from the dead as far as he was concerned, there was no way that he could repress his own emotions. Tears gushed out of his eyes almost instantly, and he charged over to Wu Zhangkong before giving him a massive hug and bursting into sobs. A faint smile appeared on Wu Zhangkong's perpetually cold face. Even though Tang Wuling had already told him that Yue Hengy was alive, he was still filled with emotions by this reunion, and even as he was smiling, there were tears welling up in his eyes. Only after losing something did one realize just how important that thing was. Long Ye nodded at Tang Wuling before turning to Yue Hengy with a pleased look in her eyes. She was the light dark Douluo, and in terms of cultivation base, even Atlas Douluo Yanming may not have been a match for her. Furthermore, she controlled the power of light, so she could naturally sense the virtually substantial light elements swirling around Yue Hengyu's body. It was as if his entire being was constructed from light elements. For a soul master with a holy angel martial soul, becoming a soul sage was a massive milestone that granted a qualitative power boost, which was why Yue Hengy was so confident in his current abilities. Not only had he become a soul sage, he had also completed the extremely arduous second holy cleansing of the holy angel clan. This was an extremely rare occurrence even in the history of the entire clan. So how could he not be excited? Only after a long while did Yue Hengy manage to get his emotions back under control, and he turned to Tang Wuling with an accusatory look on his face. You already knew, didn't you? Why didn't you tell me? Tang Wuling shrugged in response. If I had told you in advance, would I have gotten the chance to see you cry? Yue Hengy looked at him, then turned back to Wu Zhangkong, and he suddenly burst into laughter through his tears. If crying can bring teacher back to life, then I'd gladly cry 100 times. Tears began to well up in Tang Wuling's eyes as well upon hearing this. Indeed, he would also be willing to cry 100 times if it meant teacher Wu could return to life. Only then did Tang Wuling reveal the current situation of the academy to Yue Hengy, and the latter was naturally ecstatic to hear that so many members of Shrek Academy were still alive. By the way, teacher Wu, Elder Long and Tang Yu were telling me earlier that he wanted to. Tang Wuling was only halfway through his sentence before Yue Hengy realized what he was about to say, and he darted forward before clamping a hand over Tang Wuling's mouth. If you tell them what I said, our friendship is over. Yue Hengy threatened in a deliberately menacing manner. Thus, Tang Wuling didn't reveal what Yue Hengy had said about wanting to become a vice pavilion master, but he was still quite amused. All right, I've been looking for a sparring partner recently, seeing as you're back, and I can tell that you're really confident. Why don't we have a sparring match and get Elder Long and the others to give us some instruction? Yue Hengy countered. Didn't you say that you'd wait until Shaoan came so you can fight us 2-on-1? He was very confident in himself, but he had witnessed in person how Tang Wuling had won the Star Battle.net Interfederation competition, and he wasn't confident enough to think that he could beat Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling immediately turned to Long Yeyu. Elder Long, Zhang Yu made a request earlier. His mouth was clamped shut again, and Yue Hengy gritted his teeth as he said, all right, if you want a sparring match, that's what you'll get. Long Yeyu nodded as she said, I think that's a good idea. She had already heard from Wu Zhangkong about how Tang Wuling had defeated him in a battle where neither of them had used their battle armor. Hence, she continued, Zhang Yu was permitted to use his suit of two-word battle armor, but Wuling is prohibited from doing so. Yue Hengy wasn't exactly thrilled to hear this. He still wore a wry smile as he said, Elder Long, Wuling reforged my suit of two-word battle armor to create a foundation for my three-word battle armor, and I've constantly been cultivating after that, so I haven't had a chance to attain my suit of three-word battle armor yet, and I won't be able to use my battle armor either. Back when the seven of them had first separated, Tang Wuling had helped them complete the elementary forging required for their suits of three-word battle armor. However, everyone had been working hard in the cultivation thereafter, and constructing a suit of three-word battle armor wasn't an easy task, so none of them had attempted to do so. In particular, after Tang Wuling's soul refinement had improved, he had notified everyone via soul communication, telling them not to be in a hurry to construct their suits of three-word battle armor and to hold off until he made further improvements. Hence, the primary objective for this reunion of Shrek's 7 monsters was to complete their suits of 3-word battle armor. All of them were soul sages now, so they could handle suits of 3-word battle armor, and attaining them would undoubtedly drastically enhance their powers. Long Ye said, "Then I can only wish you the best of luck." The drill ground in the underground world of the Tang sect was of a far higher caliber than that of the Sanctuary. It had a massive diameter of 500 meters, which made it large enough to house mega battles, and it was not inferior in size at all even when compared to sports stadiums. Furthermore, all of the protective facilities were geared toward beings that are above the tidal Douluo level, so even 3-word battle armor masters wouldn't be able to damage this place. A faint smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face, and he was struck by a strong sense of nostalgia as he turned to look at Yue Sangyu. As soon as Yue Sangyu entered the drill ground, his aura completely changed. He seemed to have been a little fearful before, but after actually entering the drill ground, the look in his eyes and his aura underwent a massive transformation. His eyes shimmered with absolute confidence, and faint fluctuations of light began to appear around him. Tang Wulin could clearly sense that there were powerful light elemental fluctuations all around him, making him glow like a massive soul light bulb. The two appraised one another from 100 meters apart while Long Yeyu, Wu Zhangkong, and all of the inner court disciples spectated from afar. Many of the inner court disciples were actually of the opinion that Tang Wulin was unworthy to be Sea God's pavilion master, particularly those who were friends with Lan Muzi. In their eyes, Lan Muzi, who had already become a titled Douluo, was more worthy of this position. Lan Muzi wasn't any less qualified than Wu Zhangkong, and his powers were comparable if not superior to Wu Zhangkong's, so he should have been the number one choice among the younger generation. However, the Holy Spirit Douluo and the Light Dark Douluo had chosen Tang Wulin without any hesitation, despite the fact that he was only 21 years old. Chapter 1186. In contrast, Lan Muzi was already in his 30s and was in his prime. Why hadn't the Academy chosen him over Tang Wulin? Even Lan Muzi himself was rather perplexed and a little hurt. It was simply an inevitable emotional response. He knew how much pressure the Sea God's pavilion master was subjected to, but as the oldest disciple of the inner court, it was impossible for him not to feel a little indignant, and he was also more than willing to shoulder this responsibility. Hence, when Elder Long summoned everyone to spectate this battle, everyone had arrived on the scene without fail, including even the Holy Spirit Douluo. She had come to spectate the battle in case someone was injured. With her present, recovery was guaranteed unless someone were to die. Elder Long's voice rang out across the entire drill ground. On your marks. This is a battle with no rules, and the battle will end when one or both sides lose the ability to continue. Tang Wulin took a glance over at Elder Long, and he understood that Elder Long had summoned everyone to spectate this battle to create an opportunity for him to stamp his authority. As such, this couldn't just be regarded as a normal sparring match. Begin. As soon as Long Yeyu gave the signal, 7 soul rings instantly emerged from beneath Yue Sangyu's feet. What was quite astonishing to everyone was that his 7 soul rings were all golden. Tang Wulin could tell that he was using the disguise technique he had learned from the demonic island to prevent others from being able to glean his true soul ring configuration. Not only did his soul rings appear, dazzling golden light also erupted from his body, and the rich light elements that he was releasing made him resemble a miniature scintillating sun. What powerful light elements! All of the inner court disciples were rooted to the spot. At this point, Wu Sijua and the others had also been brought over to the Tang sect headquarters. They were also inner court disciples, so they were also going to be cultivating here from now on, and they were also preparing to set off for the demonic island. Their expressions had also changed slightly as they sensed the powerful light elements radiating from Yue Sangyu's body. He appeared to only be a soul sage, but even without using his suit of battle armor, he was already releasing energy fluctuations that were far more powerful than the average soul sage was capable of. Yue Sangyu was bathed in a sea of light as he said to Tang Wulin, "You better be careful, boss. I'm not the same person I once was." He then sprang into action as he spoke, raising his hand to bring a beam of golden light crashing down onto Tang Wulin from above. Tang Wulin had been struck by a burst of holy light, even though none of Yue Sangyu's soul rings had lit up. At the same time, the light radiating from Yue Sangyu's body became even brighter, and a huge projection surfaced behind him. The projection was around 15 meters tall, and it was releasing dazzling golden light. The 12 wings on its back were flapping gently, and its facial features were rather blurry and indistinct, but in the instant that it appeared, Yue Sangyu's entire body turned transparent. On this occasion, everyone could clearly see that his 7th soul ring had lit up, which meant that he had adopted his holy angel true body. Yue Sangyu had been friends with Tang Wulin for many years, so he was more than familiar with Tang Wulin's abilities, and he was well aware of just how fearsome Tang Wulin's explosive power was. That was why he was releasing his most powerful ability from the get-go in order to prevent Tang Wulin from instantly defeating him through an eruption of explosive power. As he adopted his holy angel true body, 2 pairs of pristine white wings also appeared on his back, and as he flapped those wings, his body turned completely transparent. At this point, Tang Wulin was still being bombarded by holy light, making it impossible for anyone to see him. It was undoubtedly the case that the rich light elements also provided a smokescreen that cut off his field of vision, and he wouldn't even be able to sense anything using his spiritual power with the disruption from the light elements. This meant that he was still unaware of the fact that Yue Sangyu had already adopted his martial soul true body. As such, Yue Sangyu had seized the initiative from the get-go through his battle tactics. All of the spectators were inner court disciples of Shrek Academy, all of whom were extremely prodigious soul masters, and 2-word battle armor masters at the very minimum. All of them also couldn't help but nod in approval at how well Yue Sangyu was utilizing his abilities. Furthermore, it was truly astonishing how powerful his light energy had become after adopting his martial soul true body. In the next instant, they were greeted by the sight of Yue Sangyu hurtling down toward Tang Wulin like a golden shooting star. Meanwhile, the 12-winged angel projection behind him appeared silently behind Tang Wulin. Judgment. A solemn voice echoed through the air, and it was as if the entire space had congealed in that instant. At the same time, Yue Sangyu's 3rd soul ring lit up as he released his 3rd soul skill, which was Light of Judgment. The holy light that was shining down upon Tang Wulin instantly turned into a golden color, and the boundless might surging through the air was clearly detectable even to everyone outside the drill ground. Basked in the Light of Judgment, Tang Wulin's entire body seemed to have become warped and twisted. The Light of Judgment compounded by the holy angel true body was too powerful. It was an attack that was imbued with boundless holy might, and even Tang Wulin couldn't help but let loose a muffled groan. Long Ye nodded in approval as she looked on from afar. She possessed twin martial souls and was renowned as the Light Dark Dragon Empress, as she controlled both the Light Holy Dragon and Darkness Holy Dragon martial souls. But the holiness of her light elemental power was still inferior to that of the Holy Angel martial soul. The Holy Angel martial soul definitely stood at the very pinnacle of all light attributed martial souls, and it was most effective against evil soul masters. Long Ye could tell that Yue Sangyu had already completed his 2nd holy cleansing, and with a holy aura of this caliber, he would pose a huge threat even to titled Douluo level evil soul masters. This Light of Judgment attack alone was enough to eradicate most evil soul masters in one attack, and he wasn't even wearing his suit of battle armor. Once Yue Sangyu attained a suit of 3-word battle armor, he would most definitely receive a holy attribute domain, which would make his holy light even more terrifying. In the face of the Light of Judgment, Tang Wulin's entire body seemed to have become very sluggish, and at this point, Yue Sangyu had already reached him. A golden holy sword had already materialized in his hand during his flight, and he slashed it toward Tang Wulin without any reservation. Tang Wulin seemed to have been immobilized by the Light of Judgment, and the holy sword struck his chest, immediately sending him flying as golden holy flames burned all over his body. It seemed that this new Sea God's pavilion master was completely at his opponent's mercy. However, Yue Sangyu wasn't under that impression. As soon as he sent Tang Wulin flying with his holy sword, his 4th soul ring lit up, and the 12-winged angel that had released the Light of Judgment behind Tang Wulin earlier instantly fused as one with him, causing him to become taller and broader than before. Aside from the 4 substantial feathered wings on his back, a pair of light wings also appeared, and the holy sword in his hand instantly manifested into a substantial golden holy sword. Yue Sangyu held the sword in both hands and roared, slash. A burst of golden light appeared between heaven and earth, and this golden light seemed to be threatening to slice through the entire world. The golden light instantly reached Tang Wulin, and even though there weren't any light elements seeping out in this instant, all of the spectating inner court disciples' expressions had completely changed. What a powerful attack! Yue Sangyu certainly wasn't holding back at all. It was also at this moment that Tang Wulin finally reacted. The golden flames burning around him instantly exploded, fading into countless specks of light in the surrounding surrounding air and revealing his body, which had now been covered in a layer of shimmering golden scales. The golden dragon spear had also appeared in his hand, and it had a transparent quality to it. Even after taking 3 of Yue Sengyu's attacks in succession, he seemed to have remained completely unscathed. In the face of the oncoming golden line, a serious look appeared in Tang Wulin's eyes, and a loud dragon's roar erupted from his body. In the next instant, he abruptly flapped his golden dragon wings. He only had one pair of wings, but his dragon wings were far larger than any of Yue Sengyu's pairs of wings. He flapped the wings vigorously, and they instantly propelled his body through the air like a streak of shimmering golden light as he hurtled directly toward the golden line. The golden line passed over Tang Wulin's body in a flash, but strangely enough, the segment of the line that struck his body was held back rather than passing through his body. Chapter 1187. The tip of the golden dragon spear struck the golden line to force it back, and at the same time, an indescribable aura erupted from Tang Wulin's body. A resounding boom rang out as the golden line exploded, and countless spear projections also erupted at the same time. Not only had Tang Wulin used his golden dragon vibrational explosion to destroy Yue Sengyu's attack, he had also unleashed his fury of the masses. Countless spear projections appeared in everyone's field of view before hurtling toward Yue Sengyu, and a grim look appeared on his face as he spread open his 3 pairs of wings at the same time. He slashed his golden holy sword slowly through the air, and his 5th soul ring also lit up. Terrifying energy fluctuations instantly surged through the air as countless miniature angels appeared in the surrounding area. Each angel was gently flapping its wings while letting loose roars of fury, and countless bursts of golden holy light also appeared in the air. It was as if every single light element had been ignited before transforming into sharp needles that were hurtling toward Tang Wulin. The Archangel's Fury. This was his 5th soul skill, which was enhanced by his Holy Angel Descends and Holy Angel True Body. Every single beam of angelic light struck Tang Wulin's spear projections with unerring accuracy to oppose his attack. This was the first time that Tang Wulin had encountered such strong opposition to his fury of the masses, and he was very pleased to see just how much Yue Sengyu had grown. It was also right at this moment that he caught sight of a flash of light from Yue Sengyu's 6th soul ring. It only lit up for an instant, but Tang Wulin immediately sensed that there was something amiss. A thunderous dragon's roar erupted from his mouth, and a massive golden dragon head appeared around his body. This was his dragon's might combined with his golden dragon roar. All of the energy in the air suddenly stopped in that instant, and in the face of this devastating roar of fury, all of the spectating inner court disciples felt as if their hearts had almost stopped beating. Right at this moment, one of the many tiny angels behind Tang Wulin suddenly expanded before adopting an identical form to Yue Sengyu. However, both his clone and Yue Sengyu himself faltered for an instant in the face of the golden dragon roar, and only after a split second did the two of them charge toward Tang Wulin, one from behind, and the other in a full frontal assault. That instant of delay naturally significantly hampered the abrupt nature of the attack, and a faint smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face as he instantly withdrew his fury of the masses before he stomped his left foot onto the air below. A violent explosion erupted, and a black hole suddenly appeared in midair beneath Tang Wulin's feet. The edge of the black hole was golden in color, and it resembled a violently rotating golden halo. 8 small golden dragons instantly emerged from the halo before flying off in all directions. In the instant that the black hole had appeared, the air in a diameter of 100 meters became completely twisted and warped. The 2 holy angels were also warped and instantly immobilized as a result. The spectating Lanmuzi's pupils abruptly contracted upon seeing this. What kind of power was this? To think that he was able to shatter space with a single stomp. It was exactly because he was a titled Douluo himself that he was more aware of just how fearsome this ability was. Yue Sengyu was also quite startled to see this, but right at this moment, he revealed the fruits he had reaped from this latest period of seclusion. All of the golden light suddenly crumbled and transformed into countless tiny angels. In the face of the attacks from the 8 golden dragons, the tiny angels fled in all directions within the twisted light. Even the black hole was unable to devour them, and a hint of surprise appeared in Tang Wulin's eyes. He had combined his golden dragon shakes the earth and golden dragon vibrational explosion to restrict Yue Sengyu in midair, but he didn't think that Yue Sengyu would be able to escape using such a crafty method. The golden light overlapped, and Yue Sengyu reappeared in the distance, but at this point, his face had already become rather pale. All of the spectators could only see how spectacular this battle was, but only he himself could experience just how enormous the pressure of facing Tang Wulin was. In the instant that his first pillar of holy light had struck Tang Wulin's body, he had been struck by the feeling that his attack wouldn't be able to hurt Tang Wulin. Even when he struck Tang Wulin, with his light of judgment before sending him flying with his golden holy sword, he was still struck by the same feeling. Tang Wulin was like an impregnable mountain in his eyes, and his holy light element seemed to automatically wane after striking Tang Wulin's body. What kind of ability was this? Why couldn't his attacks hurt him? Unbeknownst to him, Tang Wulin had already reached the spirit domain realm, and even though he couldn't completely control the light elements released by Yue Sengyu in his attacks, he was still capable of nullifying the light element somewhat. That, in addition to the effect of his dragon's repulse, granted him extraordinary defensive prowess, so Yue Sengyu's attacks were completely unable to harm him. To put it more accurately, at Tang Wulin's current level, it was far too difficult for an opponent of the same cultivation rank to hurt him. Yue Sengyu was panting slightly, and the phenomenon around Tang Wulin's body gradually vanished. Tang Wulin wore a smile on his face as he asked, "Was that an innate ability of yours?" Yue Sengyu nodded in response. The Holy Angel True Body had an alternative title, which was a Holy Indestructible Body. As long as his holy light still existed, he was virtually indestructible in his Holy Angel True Body form. Even if there were only a single ray of holy light left, he could still escape through it. Tang Wulin asked, "Do you have any other tricks up your sleeve? If not, then let's end things here. I'm not giving up that easily." Yue Sengyu's competitive nature had been completely ignited, and he abruptly took a deep breath as his body became transparent again. Immediately thereafter, an astonishing scene ensued. Yue Sengyu's 7 soul rings began to light up one after another, and in the blink of an eye, all 7 of them were glowing with scintillating light. From Yue Sengyu's expression, one could tell that it was quite strenuous for him to achieve this effect. Tang Wulin was also looking on in a stunned manner, and right at this moment, Yue Sengyu's first, second, and third soul rings suddenly moved, overlapping with one another before combining as one. What was happening? Had his soul rings fused with one another? Long Ye was also quite taken aback to see this, and she exclaimed, "He's mastered the Holy Angel Clan's Holy Fusion technique already. Even if it's only a very elementary level of mastery, this is still quite a remarkable feat." This was indeed quite an astonishing scene, and no one had even heard of such an occurrence before, let alone witnessed such a scenario right before their very eyes. Yue Sengyu slowly raised his holy sword up into the air, and at this point, it had already undergone a massive transformation. Tang Wulin was struck by the feeling that Yue Sengyu had suddenly attained a sword soul, and his holy sword seemed to be imbued with an extremely terrifying aura. Was this a fusion between his holy light, holy sword, and light of judgment? Was this a self-soul fusion skill as well? However, this wasn't a fusion between 2 martial souls. It was a fusion between soul skills, and Tang Wulin naturally wasn't naive enough to think that the fusion of the 3 soul skills would result in power that was equivalent to the sum of its constituent parts. This type of fusion would definitely produce power that was several times that of the sum of the 3 soul skills. He couldn't keep allowing him to fuse his soul skills as he pleased. With that in mind, Tang Wulin took the initiative for the first time. He pointed his golden dragon spear forward and unleashed his golden dragon shocks the heavens. One blue silver emperor vine erupted forth after another before instantly fusing into his golden dragon spear form a blood soul fusion skill. The blue emperor dragon shocks the heavens instantly transformed into a giant bluish golden dragon that hurtled directly toward Yue Sengyu. Chapter 1188. However, Yue Sengyu seemed to have currently entered a peculiar state. Streaks of golden light were flashing incessantly around him, and the holy sword in his hand had become extremely heavy. At the same time, the 12-winged angel that had fused into his body reappeared behind him. In the face of the giant bluish golden dragon, Yue Sengyu's eyes were shimmering with golden light, and his pupils seemed to have become transparent. It was as if he really were an angel that had descended into the mortal world. The holy sword abruptly turned transparent, and a massive golden sword projection appeared. The sky abruptly took on an illusionary quality, and the entire underground real ground seemed to be quaking slightly. No matter how one looked at it, the illusionary golden sword projection wasn't of the same caliber as the giant bluish golden dragon. However, in the instant that the two clashed, an extremely astonishing turn of events unfolded. A peculiar tearing sound rang out, and the giant dragon vaulted in midair. One had to realize that this was one of Tang Wulin's blood soul fusion skills. In the next instant, a golden line appeared all the way from the front of the giant dragon's head to the tip of its tail. The golden sword projection, which had been slightly weakened, then struck Tang Wulin's body. However, in the instant before it struck him, it was rotated slightly so that the hilt of the sword struck his body rather than the blade. Boom! Tang Wulin was instantly sent flying before crashing into the ground in the distance. Pwah! As Tang Wuling was sent flying, Yue Hengyu also threw up a mouthful of blood before plummeting from above. During his descent, all of his soul rings vanished, and he crashed straight down onto the ground. He had only mastered the holy fusion technique not long ago, so using it was still extremely difficult for him. Swiveling the sword around to strike Tang Wuling with the hilt instead of the blade was already outside the realm of his control, so he instantly suffered backlash for it. The entire drill ground had fallen completely silent. This fight had been a seesawing affair from the very beginning. Yue Hengyu had unleashed the first ferocious barrage of attacks, almost as if he had a vendetta against Tang Wuling, and each successive attack was more powerful than the previous one. He hadn't held back at all, unleashing his holy angel true body from the get-go and reducing Tang Wuling to a sandbag. However, Tang Wuling soon began to retaliate, and everyone realized that Yue Hengyu's powerful attacks had no effect on him. After that, Tang Wuling quickly unleashed a fearsome retaliation to completely dominate Yue Hengyu. Right at this moment, Yue Hengyu revealed an ability that they had never even heard of before, fusing his three soul skills together before unleashing a devastating sword strike. Just the hilt of the sword had sent Tang Wuling flying. What if he had used the blade instead? Would he have killed Tang Wuling on the spot, or at least forced him to use his battle armor? The final attack that Yue Hengyu had unleashed was definitely already of the title Douluo level. There weren't that many Inner Court disciples present who had reached that level, but all of them had been at Shrek Academy for over 10 years and had seen many powerful beings during that time, so they were naturally able to comprehend just how powerful that attack was. Just as their hearts were filled with astonishment, Tang Wuling had already dusted himself off and risen to his feet as if nothing had happened. The attack looked as if it had dealt him a devastating blow, but aside from the fact that he was a little disheveled, he didn't appear to have been injured at all. Tang Wuling rushed over to Yue Hengyu's side in a flash to help him up from the ground, and a beam of holy light also descended from above, falling upon Yue Hengyu and returning a hint of color to his pale face. Am I powerful or what? Yue Hengyu chuckled. Tang Wuling nodded in response. Indeed you are. If you had used the blade of the sword, you probably would have been able to wound me. Just the fact that his final attack had destroyed the Blue Emperor Dragon shocks the heavens was a testament to how powerful it was. However, not only was Tang Wuling not disheartened by this in the slightest, he was filled with elation instead. How could he not be elated to see his friends becoming more powerful? The more powerful they became, the lighter the burden on his shoulders would become. Hee. Are you scared? A smug look appeared on Yue Hengyu's face. It had been a very long time since he had been able to defeat Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling rolled his eyes at him. You're not under the impression that you've won, are you? Yue Hengyu puffed his chest out in response. Haven't I? Tang Wuling couldn't help but burst into laughter. All right, we'll count that as a victory for you. Then, Yue Hengyu's eyes immediately widened. You're not going to refuse to admit defeat, are you? Tang Wuling looked at him, then turned toward all of the Inner Court disciples before standing up straight. Elder Long, can I ask for your assistance? Light flashed from Long Yeyu's body, and in the next instant, she appeared directly before him. Tang Wuling continued, saying you held back at the end there, so it's hard to say who won that sparring match based on that ambiguous ending. Would you be able to take an attack from me, then decide who the victor is? A hint of a smile appeared on Long Yeyu's face. Are you saying you have an attack that's more powerful than the holy fusion technique? Tang Wuling could naturally deduce that this so-called holy fusion technique was the ability that Yue Hengyu had just unleashed, and he nodded in response. Long Yeyu said, all right, then attack me with everything you have. A serious look appeared on Tang Wuling's face, and a layer of golden light also began to spread from beneath his feet. A low dragon's roar revolved around his body, and his aura began to swell at an astonishing rate. Tang Wuling was a competitive person, but he didn't need to go out of his way to prove to everyone that he was more powerful than Yue Hengyu. However, at the conclusion of the sparring match, he could clearly see that a hint of doubt had crept into the eyes of the spectating Inner Court disciples. He then recalled Elder Long's lecture about how he was no longer just a student of Shrek Academy and a disciple of the Tang sect. Instead, he was now the Sea God's Pavilion Master and the Tang sect Master. In order to stamp his authority to cement his status, the first thing that he had to do was display enough power. Hence, he made this request to Elder Long to show everyone just how powerful he was and prove to everyone that he was worthy of his current status. Tang Wuling held his golden dragon spear in his hand, and his entire body seemed to have entered a profound state. The golden light around him gradually became more substantial, and his entire body was enshrouded within a layer of dragon's repulse that was around 3 feet thick. Elder Long had initially had a smile on her face, but her expression soon turned into one of shock. Much to her surprise, Tang Wuling was exuding a type of invisible pressure that struck her with a strong sense of oppression. Was this the bloodline intimidation from a superior dragon bloodline? Was this dragon's might? One had to realize that she possessed 2 dragon-type martial souls of the highest caliber. She was the invincible light dark dragon empress. However, even as a limit Douluo, she was struck by a sense of pressure in the face of Tang Wuling. This was something she had never experienced before. Even in her younger days, she had never felt pressure that stemmed directly from her opponent's martial soul. Even as a limit Douluo, the bloodline disparity still affected her. She was beginning to look forward to seeing just what Tang Wuling was capable of. All of a sudden, Tang Wuling's eyes began to glow with golden light, and in the next instant, he stepped forward with his left leg as a thunderous dragon's roar rang out across the entire drill ground. He had unleashed his Dragon King true body, which he had refrained from using even against Wu Zhangkong. His body instantly began to swell in size at a rapid rate, and he still retained his human form rather than transforming into a dragon, but his entire body had taken on an illusionary quality, and it was as if a crown had appeared on his head. Countless dragons' roars were erupting from all directions as if all dragons were bowing to him in subordination. His dragon's might was also instantly elevated to its peak. Chapter 1189. The countless dragon roars created an extremely astonishing spectacle, and powerful sound waves surged throughout the entire drill ground. Not only was Long Yeyu struck by a sense of pressure, even the Inner Court disciples who were outside the protective barrier all felt their bloodlines fluctuate as a sense of horror welled up in their hearts. Soul masters with dragon bloodline martial souls were exceedingly rare, but these were all disciples of Shrek Academies of the Inner Court, so there was quite a considerable proportion of them who possessed dragon-type bloodlines and martial souls. All of them were filled with a sense of horror that stemmed from deep within their hearts, and they were all struck by the urge to fall to the ground in subordination in the presence of Tang Wuling. It was as if he was no longer just a soul master, but a monarch that ruled over the entire dragon clan instead. Golden Dragon King. He's the Golden Dragon King that won the Star BattleNet Inter-Federation competition. An Inner Court disciple suddenly exclaimed. In order to hide their identities, none of these Inner Court disciples competed in the Star BattleNet Inter-Federation competition, but they had certainly been keeping tabs on the competition. However, never did they think that the Golden Dragon King, who had crushed countless powerful beings to claim the championship title, was standing right in front of them. Furthermore, it was quite apparent that Tang Wuling had become far more powerful than when he had participated in the competition. In the past, the Golden Dragon King had only been a 6-ring soul emperor, but he was now already a 7-ring soul sage. Light dark Douluo Long Yeyu originally had her hands clasped behind her back, but now her arms were reflexively hanging by her sides. This was an unconscious reaction to danger that stemmed from the vast amount of battle experience she had accumulated over the past 200 years. It was quite clear that she was sensing a threat from Tang Wuling. Tang Wuling slowly raised his golden dragon spear, and it was only a simple gesture, but it made his aura swell even further at a drastic rate. All of the energy particles in the air surged toward him regardless of what attribute they were, and he was like a black hole as he devoured this energy in a frenzy. Under normal circumstances, there would be no way for him to do this in battle as he was taking far too long to prepare his attack. However, in order to prove to everyone that he had the power to lead Shrek Academy and the Tang sect, Tang Wuling chose to take the time he needed to store power. At this point, his mind had already entered a complete state of immersion, and the only thing he could feel was his body swelling incessantly. He thought back to the battle he had fought against the Abyssal Plane, back to the scenes during which he had fought the Black Sovereign and countless other powerful Abyssal beings, while absorbing the vast amount of natural energies being bestowed upon him by the blessing of the ruler of the plane. At the time, even the enormously powerful Black Sovereign was no match for him, and if it weren't for the Holy Lord's appearance, Tang Wuling could have forced back the Abyssal title on his own. Without the Blood God Array, there was no way to absorb as much natural energies as he had in the past, but with his Spirit Domain realm spiritual power, he was still capable of drawing upon some natural energies. As for his physical tolerance, that was something that he didn't even have to consider. His body was more powerful than even that of a hyper Douluo, and that was his main advantage. In reality, Yue Hengyu's holy fusion technique had indeed been quite powerful, but even if he had been struck by the blade of the sword, it would have only resulted in some slight injuries at most. Boom. The light around Tang Wulin's body suddenly exploded, and all of his dragon's repulse was set alight before fusing as one with his devastating dragon's might. A thunderous dragon's roar that shook heaven and earth erupted from Tang Wulin's body, and a massive golden dragon abruptly rose up into the air behind him. The first thing to appear was the dragon's head. This was an extremely lifelike and gigantic golden dragon head that rose up into the air with a ferocious look in its eyes. This was immediately followed by the massive dragon's body, which was close to 100 meters in length. When its entire body finally emerged onto the drill ground, the entire space was illuminated by the golden light radiating from its body. Long Yeyu's expression finally changed slightly. Her eyes were full of approval at the sight of the enormous energy fluctuations erupting from Tang Wulin's body, but at the same time, the horror in her heart had risen to its peak. The disparity between their powers quickly dwindled, and at this point, the energy fluctuations emanating from Tang Wulin's body had already exceeded those of a titled Douluo. Furthermore, she could clearly sense that her own soul power was being debilitated to a certain extent by this pressure. What a powerful bloodline. He really did deserve to become the champion of the Star Battle Net Inter Federation competition. Could it be that the legends about the dragon god splitting up into the Golden Dragon King and Silver Dragon King are true, and that he's inherited the Golden Dragon King bloodline? With her light and darkness holy dragon martial souls, there was no way she would have such a violent reaction to a normal elemental dragon king, so he had to possess the Golden Dragon King bloodline. Long Yeyu didn't attempt to take Tang Wulin's attack without adopting any defensive measures. She slowly raised her right hand, and light and darkness alternated as they shimmered over her palm, creating a peculiar vortex that absorbed the energy particles in the air. As expected of one of the most powerful beings in the world, and the pillar of Shrek Academy, as soon as she raised her hand, Tang Wulin immediately discovered that he could no longer absorb the elements of light and darkness in the air. At the same time, Long Yeyu's aura stabilized itself. There was simply too massive a disparity between their cultivation ranks. As a limit Douluo, there was no way that Tang Wulin could truly restrict her no matter how powerful his bloodline intimidation was. It was also at this moment that Tang Wulin's golden dragon spear had been raised to the point where it was perpendicular to his body. A loud dragon's roar rang out as the giant golden dragon circled around in the air before hovering behind him. As Tang Wulin vigorously flapped his golden dragon wings, the giant dragon also flapped its wings, and their two figures instantly fused as one. In the instant that they fused together, a black halo suddenly appeared in the surrounding area. It was as if the entire space had been broken and they had fallen into a black hole. Roar. Only then did the dragon's roar spread over the entire drill ground, and the protective barrier instantly began to warp and twist violently as it reached virtually the upper limit of its tolerance threshold. All of the spectators were greeted by the sight of an illusionary projection, and the giant golden dragon seemed to have struggled out of the black halo before shimmering in midair for an instant. The entire drill ground erupted into a frenzy. The earth instantly peeled back, and the protective barrier began to rattle like a window pane, seemingly unable to withstand such powerful energy fluctuations. Was it about to be broken? All of the spectating inner court disciples hurriedly released their martial souls and prepared to defend themselves as astonishment welled up in their hearts. Was this guy even a human anymore? Was he really only a soul sage? He wasn't even wearing his suit of battle armor. The explosive power that he was displaying had already risen above the realm of a titled Douluo, and even a full power strike from a hyper Douluo couldn't be more powerful than this. Yue's Hangyu had also been completely rooted to the spot. He knew that Tang Wulin was very powerful and that he may not be able to defeat Tang Wulin even with his holy fusion technique, but only now, as Tang Wulin began to display his true power, did he realize that the gap between them had only widened rather than shortened. This guy truly wasn't human. A light barrier that seemed to be substantial and illusionary at the same time enshrouded the entire drill ground just in the nick of time to prevent the energy within from escaping. Countless streaks of golden light then erupted forth before coming to a rest right in front of Elder Long's right palm. It appeared to be a massive vortex that was imbued with unfathomably terrifying power, and the conical tip of the vortex was right in front of Long Yeyu's hand. Chapter 1190. This was a light barrier that was alternating between light and darkness, as well as illusion and reality. It didn't appear to be very large. It only had a diameter of around a meter with Long Yeyu's palm at the center, but it was able to ward off Tang Wulin's all or nothing attack. The giant golden dragon gradually emerged from within the vortex, and it was extremely grandiose to behold. Even though it had been stopped cold in its tracks, it still presented quite a stunning sight to everyone. Lan Muzi's expression had changed drastically as he knew that there was no way he would be able to block this attack, even if he were to don his suit of battle armor. Was Tang Wulin already this powerful? Who would have thought that this would be the outcome? Who else aside from Elder Long would be able to block this attack? Perhaps Holy Spirit Douluo Yali would also be capable of replicating this feat, but she wasn't a soul master who specialized in battle, so in the face of such an ability, she would most likely be forced to take evasive measures as well. The more powerful the inner court disciple, the clearer it was to them just how terrifying Tang Wulin's attack was. The golden light gradually receded as Tang Wulin reappeared on the drill ground, and everyone's expressions had changed slightly as they appraised him from afar. Right at this moment, they were greeted by an even more astonishing sight. Long Yeyu's upper body swayed slightly, and she retreated a half step. What? He had managed to force Elder Long back by a half step. Everyone was stunned into complete silence. Who was Long Yeyu? She was one of the most powerful limit Douluo in this world. She had twin martial souls, and she was also the eldest living limit Douluo. If one had to choose the most powerful being in this world, then she would certainly be a very strong candidate. Aside from her old age, everything else about her was virtually unmatched. However, she had been forced back a half step by Tang Wulin, even though he was only a 7-ring soul sage. How was this possible? Tang Wulin plunged his golden dragon spear into the ground to support his body as he panted heavily. His face was slightly pale, but his heart was filled with elation. He had given everything he had, combining all of his essence, energy, and spirit as one to unleash that all or nothing attack. He was absolutely sure that the power of that attack was comparable to that of a hyper Douluo. Ever since he had become a soul sage, he had never given everything he had in a single attack as he had done here, and it had to be said that this was a wonderful feeling. He had released everything that was pent up inside him, and only in that extreme state could he better experience what level of power his body was currently at, thereby allowing him to find ways to better utilize this power. The holy fusion technique hadn't managed to harm him earlier, but it had provided him with quite a bit of inspiration. It was undoubtedly the case that the holy angel martial soul's unique characteristics were what allowed one to unleash the holy fusion technique. Tang Wulin's blue silver emperor martial soul wasn't able to accomplish this, but his golden dragon king bloodline was also very special. So would he be able to somehow replicate the holy fusion technique? From Yue's Hangyu's reaction, it was quite apparent that using the holy fusion technique placed a huge strain on one's body, but bodily strain was something that Tang Wulin was the least afraid of. What kind of strain could harm his body? Furthermore, if he had worn his suit of battle armor, he would have definitely been able to unleash even more offensive power. That spear strike was most definitely the most powerful attack he had ever unleashed through his own power alone. Long Yeyu withdrew her hand before giving Tang Wulin a nod of approval. Well done. You are indeed capable of withstanding the holy fusion technique. Yue's Hangyu was no longer in the mood to compete with Tang Wulin, and he wore a sullen look as he said, "You're not even a human being. I don't want to speak with you anymore." An amused smile appeared on Tang Wulin's face, and he extended a respectful bow toward Long Yeyu. "Thank you, Elder Long. You're welcome, Pavilion Master. I'm very pleased to see how much you've grown, Pavilion Master. All right, let's leave things here for today. Everyone, go back and cultivate now." Long Yeyu slowly departed as she spoke. Tang Wulin looked on at her departing figure and heaved an internal sigh. Elder Long really was doing everything she could to support him. No one else had been able to identify this, but he was certainly aware that Long Yeyu had deliberately taken that half step backward, rather than having been forced back by his attack. At the time, Long Yeyu still had energy to spare to support the protective barrier around the entire drill ground, so how could she have been unable to completely withstand his attack? In the instant that his attack struck Long Yeyu, Tang Wulin felt as if he were facing the core of the entire world. If his body had already been over 100 meters tall at the time, then to him, Long Yeyu felt like a bottomless abyss. No matter how powerful his attack was, it would be easily nullified by Long Yeyu. This wasn't just a disparity in power anymore, they were simply on two completely different levels. If he wanted to reach Elder Long's level, then he would have to put in countless hours of hard work. This sparring match had truly been a great experience for him. Not only did he get a chance to witness the power of Yue's Hangyu's holy fusion technique, he also had a chance to release everything he had against Elder Long. At the same time, it was made clear to him that he still had a long way to go. Long Yeyu's palm had seemed to be quite simple and mundane, but it taught him a valuable lesson, which was that he had to remain conscientious and maintain a good work ethic no matter how fast he was progressing. Do you know was sitting beside Kaienku Donfang, tongue, and her purple pupils suddenly turned vertical for an instant. In that instant, she felt as if she had heard an extremely familiar roar, and her bloodline began to churn within her veins. Had he already reached that level? Her eyes became slightly glazed over. It was quite painful for her that she couldn't go and see him even though they were so close to one another. She really missed him. Right at this moment, Kyanki Dongfang's voice suddenly sounded. Naya, it's here. Only then did Yuna return to her senses and cast her gaze toward the auction stage. A golden trolley was pushed onto the stage with a red cloth draped over it. Under normal circumstances, this vibrant red color would be flashy to the point of vulgarity, but in the grandiose setting of the auction hall, it seemed to fit in perfectly. An excited look appeared on the elderly auctioneer's face. The next auction item could be said to be the most important one in the history of our auction house. We've waited a very, very long time for this auction item, and it's attracted the most important guests from all over the continent. Before the bidding begins, I must thank everyone for coming on behalf of the Heaven Dou auction house. Now then, I'm sure everyone's sick of waiting, so without further ado, let's begin. I'm sure most of the guests present will have heard about this auction item through different avenues, but as the auctioneer, I must still present a detailed introduction for this unmatched treasure. A serious look appeared on the auctioneer's face as he spoke, and the lights in the auction hall also dimmed collectively, leaving only a ray of golden light shining down upon the trolley. Just what was under that red cloth? The auction house had a duty to keep the origins of its auction items strictly confidential, but what I can tell you is that this is something that can change the future. It's not a spirit item, nor an uncommon metal. Instead, it's something that no one knows the exact origin of. We named it the Ice God's Heart. The auctioneer abruptly removed the red cloth as he spoke, and in the instant that he did so, everyone's gaze was immediately drawn to the item under the cloth. This was a transparent box that was constructed from some kind of unknown material, and there was what appeared to be a gem within the box. It was only around the size of a longan and had the shape of a water droplet. It was entirely icy blue in color and had countless tiny facets. It wasn't very large, but when the golden light shone down upon it, it reflected countless rays of dazzling light that were icy blue instead of golden in color. The dazzling icy blue light was reflected to all corners of the auction house, and everyone was struck by a chilly sensation. It appears to be just an ordinary gem, but I'm sure that everyone can see just how unique it is from the way it refracts light. One detail that we've managed to verify is that 9 titled Douluos have already given their lives thus far to obtain it, and I'm sure all of you can guess its function from its name. That's right, its ability is extremely cold. Our testing devices tell us that the temperature around the Ice God's Heart is constantly maintained at between -250 degrees Celsius to -273 degrees Celsius or -418 to -459 degrees Fahrenheit. This means that its temperature is always hovering around absolute zero. We have reason to believe that it's the core of all cold temperatures, and it most likely originates from the extreme northern lands. Following thorough examinations, we've determined that the energy imbued within it is so enormous that it's somewhere between that of a 9th grade soul missile and a 10th grade soul missile. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.